Hacksters! Today we're in the studio with my fully vaccinated friend and myself, DJ Harrigan.
Hello.
How are you doing?
Good, good. It's nice to have an in-person interview. It's been a million years.
It's so strange, but awesome. And part of the reason it's so cool is because I got to look at this robot firsthand. What is this?
This is the beginnings, or the partial beginnings, of Wheatley, one of the most iconic robotic characters from the Portal video game franchise. And this is part of his eye assembly. He's basically a giant eye. So it's weird to say like his inner eye. I have to make up all these weird terms for things. Just like he's got like 3 pupils and 3 irises. So, but this is 3D printed. And this is my current pride and joy because it is my active project.
So tell me about it. So Wheatley is this eye character, a robot eye.
Yes.
What's his deal?
His deal is there's a giant underground facility that is managed largely by robots. And one of these robots is this nice spherical guy voiced by comedian Stephen Merchant. So he's got a really affable, cheery English accent, which will be incorporated. I've got just a Teensy right here, a Teensy 4.0 audio adapter, which is just like, it's one of the best audio systems. The eye will have a Raspberry Pi, but I don't like using audio on the Raspberry Pi because it's just simple. Like this is just simple and easy to go.
I do the same thing in some of my robots.
Really?
Like have a Raspberry Pi and then like a separate model, like a Teensy for the audio. It's just like, it's so much less of a headache.
I know you need something because like the line out, the headphone jack is low quality. Like I don't think you can do more than like, I don't know, 32 kilohertz. It's something bad. It's something really crappy, and it's always noisy.
And then you have like, there's USB sound cards, there's like respeaker, 2 mics, Pi-Hat kind of things, like extensions. Yeah,
Pimeroni, I like their stuff a lot. They've got, DACs and, just I2S adapters and things like that, which I really like. Man, I love just being able to say really, really deep hardware things, because it's like, I don't get to talk about this in my normal life, but this is my life. I love embedded hardware. One thing I'm really hot on right now is Pololu. Pololu Robotics and Electronics makes this really snazzy Maestro servo controller, and it's just is it Atmel? I think it's an Atmel. No, it's a PIC chip. But they've got nice custom firmware in there, so you can just load scripts if you want, or you can communicate to it as another device. So it can do like acceleration smoothing, and it's really nice. It's really handy. I mean, it's just a nice like power distribution board because I'm doing more and more with servos.
That's super cool. I like how it's got USB mini. And so it might be like an older board, which is like, we're so focused so frequently on like, you have to have the newest thing and like the fancy new stuff. And like, there's stuff that's been around for years and years and years that just still works and is still like best in class for lots of things.
Exactly. It's like, it's a robust connector. So it's like, I don't want to fiddle micro USB, they break. USB-C is fine, but like, then it costs more for them to make anything with it. Keep it simple. And then right now it's just got, it's a little hard to see. We've got 4 servos.
Tell me about these servos.
Yeah. Little micro metal gear servos. I think this is like as much torque as you can get in the little micro format. It's like 3 kilograms/centimeters. Of course, that's stall torque, so it doesn't really get that. But just to control the eyelids themselves and the pupil, which I can't actually force right now.
So have you got like an LED behind that pupil, or what's your plan for it?
Oh yeah. So one of the not that I wasn't going to do this, but one of the things that I really got excited about was I found a round LCD on AliExpress.
Like this big?
A 5-inch 1080 by 1080. So it's gorgeous. I know, I want to bring it, but it's so fragile. I'm like, I can't bring it in my backpack. If I crack it, it takes 6 weeks to get here. I only have one.
Do you mind telling us how much that runs you?
When I bought it, I think plus shipping, I paid $160, which is a lot.
That's not too bad, honestly.
It's not too bad for cutting edge. When I bought it, like the stamp on the back, or like little digital printout, said July 2020 was the date of manufacture. I think I got it in like September of last year. So like,
it's large,
it's
and it's round.
It is this size. Like this Pupil will be a full HD display. So the thing I'm going to do, like I just say Wheatley, but because it's a display, you know, the game has other robots that the only difference functionally is their iris changes.
Right.
So it's going to be all those characters, really.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Wheatley's just the one that people recognize the most.
So what are his functions going to be? You've got these like motor things going on. You've got audio going on. How do you interact with this Wheatley?
So that's something I need to do. I have a plan. I have a plan, though. Wheatley is just going to be animatronic, purely puppeted with pre-recorded things. But the issue is, so when he's all said and done, he'll have 14 servos. I am not that good at math, and the inverse kinematics for like doing all of that, like he's just such a weird shape and there's so much going on. I can't do that programmatically. My plan is to make a Waldo, like a remote controller that mechanically replicates his motions. So that will have, I bought position sensors, which really are just high quality potentiometers. So those are, I'm going to make something that I can put my arm into. So it's going to be like digital puppetry.
Oh, that's so cool.
I'm really excited for that because I can use that for GLaDOS or any other character. Because it'll just be sensors and like just.
And then you can record it and like play it back and stuff.
That's the plan.
Oh yeah, like for the blinking.
Yeah, blinking. Like it's actually going to be really hard. Well, I don't know how hard it's going to be, but he's got eyelids and like little handles that move up and down, which also kind of function like eyebrows.
Yeah.
So it's like I'm gonna have to do two hands at the same time. It's gonna look really goofy and fun. I can't wait to do the side by side of like you see Wheatley talking and then you see like my hands doing like the puppetry. So it'll be digital puppetry.
Like I love seeing the behind the scenes of the Muppet Show and whatever.
Oh yeah.
Oh my god, that's so cool. You mentioned GLaDOS. This is not the first portal based robot that you've built.
No.
And the other GLaDOS, is it a potato?
My GLaDOS?
Yeah.
No, the full one.
Oh, okay.
The full one.
I knew that already. I just like had to add.
No.
Are you gonna make a potato?
I have a plan for that because I think ThinkGeek already did sell one. So I like doing things that haven't been done before, and of like if there's already a commercial product that's like pretty darn good, I'm like, eh.
Okay.
But I haven't quite figured that out yet. But because people want it, I want to give the people what they want. So I did build a version of GLaDOS in 2018, but she was really simple. Her eye could only move up and down, and she could blink. But towards the end of last year, I started building version 2, which was a lot more complicated, which she still only ended up having 5 servos. But the big thing was she could not only look up and down, but her eye could move in and out, which was like a really fun mechanism to figure out because that had to be like on a carriage and slide out. I wish I'd brought her too because like, I'm just gesturing with my hand.
Well,
but
we've
like
got your YouTube channel.
Oh yeah, that's true. We can pull up the footage.
So many process videos.
Part 2.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah.
To build an animatronic version of GLaDOS so she appears in Portal 2. While I don't have a subterranean research facility yet, I'm going to start by building a scaled version of her head. To add as much. Last week, I made the core of her.
Well, actually, I think this is a good start.
Today's objective.
I've only seen little snippets of these on Instagram.
Here's how. I modeled her newest mechanism in Fusion 360. Here's a cross-section view to get a better understanding. The slide mechanism consists of a pivoting block that holds 2 guide rods and space for some half-inch flange oil-impregnated rods.
So that little that little cutaway showed the carriage mechanism, but like getting all that dialed in was a lot of fun. Her eye, there's so much going on in her eye assembly, and I'm not doing it yet, but I already want to make a version 3 because like she's so hard to take apart. Like it takes me over an hour just to get like, and the eye is usually the thing I need to change the most. So it's like taking off her shell. I have to unscrew like 1,000,000 bolts just to get at the interior. So that was one of the big things I thought about for Wheatley is making it easy to take apart.
Yeah.
Like in general, no glue. Never use glue in your projects. It's the worst.
Unless you're at like a conference and you have to.
Yeah, if you have to. Only if you have to.
Yeah.
Did RT break?
So many times. I did a whole talk at SuperCon about all the different ways RT broke.
Oh, yeah?
I was like, oh, mostly the wings. That's why the second version has them mounted on zip ties, which are like so tough
a little
and
compliant.
flexible. Yeah, they're so good. Yeah, all the so speaking of like upgrades that we do to make things more workable, more take apart a little more fixable, what have you done in Wheatley that you didn't do in GLaDOS to make it easier?
I mean, less parts is always better. Like I went a little overboard because GLaDOS has lots of like little non-functional widgets and greeblies all over. Yeah. I'm glad you know the term because I'm like it's people don't say it very much. That don't do anything but are important. Like if they're not there, it's like something's just a little bit off. But with Wheatley, he doesn't have as many non-functional parts. Everything's pretty structural. So I just try to think about, and one like my biggest tip for designing anything that you make in CAD and need to assemble, model how you're going to use a screwdriver or anything to unscrew things, because it's easy to put a screw wherever you want. But if you need 5 inches of clearance to unscrew it, the screw might as well not exist.
Oh, man.
And I still do this. Like there's still a couple things on here where I'm like, I can just barely twist it.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I avoided that.
So you modeled everything in Fusion 360.
Yeah.
Is that what you always use?
Always, yeah. I'm in Fusion hours every day.
Whoa.
Yeah.
And I see it looked like you had some machined metal parts. You've got these laser cut acrylic parts and you've got 3D printed parts. Tell us about your process for sort of pulling all of that out from Fusion and putting it together.
Yeah, so that's another thing I like to think about from the very beginning is making stuff for the fabrication process. So if something is a flat panel, it should be made out of a flat piece of material, laser cut or aluminum CNC if it needs that strength. Usually it doesn't. I just like the way it looks. Like I'd rather make parts out of aluminum. But like when it comes to like complex curves and things like that, that's all 3D printing. It's so, I mean, it's magic.
It is magic, yeah.
I've 3D printed hundreds and hundreds of parts, but it's still satisfying. Like I drew something on a computer. Half an hour later, I've got this little widget, this little thing that I just pulled out of non-existence, and now I can assemble it and it comes to life.
What is your 3D printer of choice?
I have a few printers. I do have a Prusa Mark III, a Craftbot XL, and I did also recently work with Craftbot, and they sent me a Craftbot Flow IDEX XL, so independent dual extruders.
Whoa.
Very fancy. Which I haven't really taken advantage of, but one of the really cool things that I like is, I mean, 3D printers jam. They get, however filament jams. The additional head, if one of them jams, it can just come in and take over. So I print lots of big parts. It's a big machine. And with this, it's like, I think this eyelid failed. I'm like, oh, that's a 12-hour print. Oh. But then it just like recovered. And so like, restarting. And like 20 minutes later, it just finished.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh, man. The last 20 minutes of a night, that's a nightmare.
Yeah.
True. So we were at Pier 9 and we were working with these huge object printers, which were also dual extrusion. And so there's multiple things that you could do with that. You could do like flexible and rigid materials mixed together. You could do piece and then also some like water sort of gummy removable support material. And then you could also do like multiple colors.
The crunchy jello, that's how I was referring to it.
It's so weird. I have some parts still that have like that weird, like it never really comes off.
No, or like the texture of it was always a little porous.
Yeah.
It never really was smooth.
Yeah. So what are you thinking of using this dual extrusion printer for?
One of the things I could do is print soluble supports.
Yes, that would make my life so much easier. I want that so bad.
Have you tried it?
No, but you're talking about doing like these really nice complex curves, and all I'm thinking about is like, support material.
Right. Yeah.
That would be so nice.
You should just hit up Prusa and be like, hey, do you give me a multi-filament? I forget the name of their not Mosaic. That's another company.
That's like a whole company.
Yeah, but Prusa's got their multi-filament device. So you could definitely
Want it.
do that. But that's the other thing. For me, I spend as much time as possible designing things to avoid having any support material. Because then it's just a waste. Like I hate throwing plastic away.
And that's a waste of time.
It's a waste of time. It's a waste of material. Like everything I make is out of PLA just because it's cheap, it's fast, and it's reasonably biodegradable. As opposed to like ABS or something that's gonna last a million years. This will just last a few hundred.
And you can like remelt it and like form it into stuff. I was trying to do that for a while, like just like using a heat gun to melt it into forms and stuff. But it's tricky. It's definitely tricky. It never quite goes liquid. It's very goopy.
And then the risk of self-burning is very high.
I still do that every time I use a hot glue gun. I can't be trusted with anything.
That was one of the things. So I couldn't for the life of me find the right servo horns for these micro servos. They did come with some, but I lost them.
It always happens. And then you have ones that like are slightly too big or something.
Right. Like the spline wasn't right. So that was what I did. I 3D printed a horn and I made it just a little undersized and then heated it up in hot water, which honestly didn't work not the way I wanted it to. Maybe there just wasn't enough like thermal mass in this guy.
Interesting.
But then I just shoved it on there and then like the plastic, cools around the metal spline. And now you've got this nice fitting horn. It's not going to hold up to like tens of pounds, but for this purpose, it's good enough. So if you ever lose a horn, it's worth trying to make your own, because I mean, these also took minutes to print. So,
so nice.
Yeah.
I should copy that because I can never find the right servo horn.
No. But when I don't have them here, but one of the things I always like to get is they make like super cheap circular adapters that have threaded holes because I like using screws for everything. So I just buy a bunch of those, like pop them on. And then now I've got this nice aluminum thing with machined holes or threaded holes. So now I can mount whatever to it. And I don't have to worry about that so much.
I love this little gimbal thing you got in there.
Yeah. So just it's a little hard to see, but there's just a universal joint right in the center for his core support, and that it's actually a little sloppy. So I do have a smaller one, and I might go down to that because the twisting is just from play. From play inside that universal joint. But without that, he'd be pretty rigid. And I might still add like some little springs or like a bungee or something, just so there's a little more, smooth motion as well.
You mentioned Stewart Platforms when talking about this, and I know I've heard this before, but I don't remember what exactly it is. Could you explain? Yeah,
so a Stewart platform is a parallel motion platform. I don't know actually a whole lot about it, but basically if you have 6 linear actuators in this particular geometric arrangement, you can get translation along 3 axes and rotation all from that, and they're really rigid. So they're just inherently stable, and they look cool.
Yeah, it's kind of like one of those reverse delta bots, right? Where you got the little platform on
deltas are also parallel motion platforms. I don't know too much about this. I never took the mechatronics class.
I'll figure out the terminology.
But like he actually has a Stewart platform modeled in game, which is pretty cool. Like it's rare that game designers model a real thing.
It's like it's so cool.
Right? They're just like magical robot joint. It's just a sphere and it does whatever you want and there's no visible parts. Like he actually has a real Stewart platform modeled in his character. Granted, I don't have enough room to make it look like that. I've basically just abandoned making it look accurate internally because it's like that's not what people are really there. As long as the face and outer shell looks right, I feel like that's what I'm aiming for. So that's another reason why I'm doing the remote control Waldo. Is the math behind that is just a little over my head.
That's notoriously difficult.
Right. But you can get that full range of motion from it, which is so cool. Like, I don't know, there's not any other way to do that as simply. I think that's why they're so robust.
So tell us about both of these are designed to sort of swoop through the air and stuff with GLaDOS and Wheatley.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any tips for mounting things that are supposed to do that? Like, how are you mounting them? They're probably not on a huge, like, you know, gantry or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, what are you doing?
Well, for right now, Wheatley has I modeled a Visa compatible pattern mount in his rear frame, so I can just attach him to a normal computer monitor arm.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, which actually was like a last minute design because, you know, I modeled him like, how am I actually going to hold him up? Because he's a sphere. Like, that's just not, it's not workable. So I realized that I wanted him suspended in the air. And eventually, like, I do want him on the management rail so he can like look around and do all this. That'll be a separate project altogether. But yeah, so that just made a nice, simple mounting arrangement for him. Yeah.
That's so cool. So I have an embarrassing confession, which is that I'm not actually totally sure what your current job is. Are you at Element 14?
I make videos for Element 14 Presents.
Oh, okay, cool.
I've done other things, but relatively consistently over the past almost 3 years now, I've been making videos for them. So that's where I built version 1 of GLaDOS. And I've built a lot of other things. I'm actually really excited. So I'm getting something published in Make Magazine for the first time. So I made a magic GIF ball. So it looks like an 8-ball, but you shake it and it answers in GIFs.
Oh, that's great.
So it was. What did you just imagine?
I don't want to interrupt you, but there's this character in the in one of my favorite graphic novels, Rice Boy, and his name is the One Electronic, or TOE, and his form is basically a robot with a head that's a TV, and his face is like this round screen, like that basically. Yeah. That like is constantly showing like clips from like old cartoons or movies or whatever that match his mood.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's amazing. And I feel like, and I just like, oh my God, you're my TOE.
I need to read
really
this.
Want to do it. It's a really beautiful graphic novel. It's like very simple, but also very like poignant, I guess.
Okay. Yeah.
And it has some like made up
is it older?
And stuff. No, it's from maybe 15 years ago.
Okay, I'd say that's relatively recent.
Yeah.
But so it sounds like you need to get around display and make that character.
Yeah, it's funny because in this other graphic novel, Saga, there's also like people with TV heads.
Right. Prince Robot?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like there's a whole race of them. But you know.
Or like, did you watch Fully Cooley?
No, I didn't.
Oh, okay. There's another robot. There's another. It's just like a CR.
That one came first.
Well, Saga's pretty new. Saga's like in the last 10 years, I think.
Yeah, like Rice Boy was definitely before Saga, but if there's something else before that, I'm very curious.
No, Fully Cooley is super weird. It's just an old, very short anime.
All I remember is the guitar.
Yeah. Yeah. So you got to make your own. I'm assuming it's kind of like
from you.
Android, basically. Right?
Yeah, basically like an old school looking robot with like, you know, round joints and like and stuff, and like
also like super classic robot.
Yeah, and like white cartoon gloves.
Weird.
Yeah,
okay. Yeah. I can't wait to look this up. Yeah.
Okay. So let's see. Oh, tell us about being a YouTuber. We saw in this video that we looked at a second ago that you have these beautiful cutaway shots. You have these beautiful other things. Do you have any tips for people on how to like document their projects in ways that are beautiful and also visually clear?
I guess the simplest answer is always show, don't tell. It's so easy to make a talking head video, and I wish I could do that, but like anything you're describing, you can always show that mechanism. Like the thing with that carriage, I couldn't show it in real life. There's like too much mechanically going on. You can't see what's happening.
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons I love 3D modeling is I can chop things in half. I can go wherever. It's infinite. So making those cutaways is really cool. Just always show as much as you can and take more pictures and more B-roll than you ever want. Like Absolutely. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're like, I don't think I'm going to use this. You want it. You're going to use it later. And it's always saved me. I've never been like, I have too much footage. I'm disappointed at the amount of footage I took. It's always, I'm missing a shot of like, you know, putting something together. Yeah. And it's, you know, with something like this, I design everything to be easily taken apart with like screws. So I could refilm it. And I did that with GLaDOS where I'm like, oh, I put it all together. That took 3 hours. Let me take her apart and then film it because I didn't show something. So
that's horrible.
Yeah.
I've had to redo videos, but usually it's like 15 minutes because I wasn't recording, but like 3 hours is like, oh, that's pain.
Yeah. So yeah, those are my biggest tips that I can offer because I'm still a new YouTuber.
What about for 3D printing? You've got this really nice, I noticed that there's these parts here that are like sanded carbon fiber. And do you have any tips for printing with carbon fiber? Can it be like abrasive?
Oh, well, no, this is actually PLA.
Oh, okay. That's
I just sanded it down.
Okay, and then you've got like carbon fiber rods. I was gonna say, like, if you're gonna be sanding carbon fiber, you gotta mask.
Even this, because they're just tubes that I cut. I'm like super anal. I'm like, make sure they're all wet. Make sure there's absolutely no dust because you know your lung. Whenever I buy a piece of safety equipment, I'm like, because I bought like a really nice respirator for the first version of GLaDOS because I put fiberglass on the inside of her shell, and like there was just so much of it everywhere. I'm like, are my lungs worth $150? And the answer is always yes. You know, I'm like, oh, I don't want to spend $150 on a nice mask.
You definitely don't want to.
I can breathe easily.
Yeah. It's funny that you said show and don't tell because like that's exactly what we're here for. Of course, is like it's just so exciting. I get to touch someone else's robot for the first time in so long.
And this is just basically a static model. I can't wait for him to be done.
Yeah.
And like animatable.
And you couldn't even bring all the pieces that you already have because it has to go in a backpack and stuff.
Yeah.
And
but
delicate.
When he's done, if you would like to meet full Wheatley, I can bring him to the Hackster office. Yeah.
Amazing. That's so cool. Yeah. So we saw on your Instagram. Let's pull it up real quick. Actually, you've got a lot of cool stuff on there.
I know what you're saying, where it's like you want to post something good and like high quality. And, you know, even something like that, like when I posted that pneumatic thing, I'm like, that's just whatever. Like,
that's really cool.
But people like it. It was just so weird.
Wow. And this is Festo, West Germany. Wow.
Yeah.
But this is Festo, the people who make all the beautiful biomimicking robots.
Yeah. Their stuff is super inspirational because it's beautiful. Like no one does anything else even close.
You see one of their robots, and you're like, that's Festo, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you want a robot that flies like an actual bird?
Or a manta ray, or a kangaroo, or an ant. Like, everything they make is so amazing.
It's so good. Okay. But the reason I pulled this up was because you have a picture of Miss Minutes from Loki. And I was wondering if you have any plans for, like, what do you have plans for coming up?
Man, I have so many things planned now. One of the thing that I like most about YouTube is talking to people. Like there are, you know, hundreds of comments of people, you know, just interacting and saying, you know, what they love. Very little of what they don't love. I'm actually pretty lucky in terms of like the positivity because what I'm making is so specific. It's like you wouldn't click on this if you don't already know what it is and you kind of like it.
And you've also been doing videos for years and years.
I have. I've been making projects for a long time. It's only been recently that I've like invested in doing my own videos. Plus, like I've really cut my teeth doing stuff for Element 14, where it's like I've made almost 30 videos for them. So now I've got a process, and I know how to do it quickly, and have fun and enjoy myself.
Yeah, that's so key. People can totally pick up on it when you're like enjoying what you're doing.
Yeah, and like the thing I want to start next, and I've already been planning this out, is doing a separate series. So it's not private or anything. One thing I'm going to do is called Aperture IRL. So I want to make everything as much as possible from Portal 2 because there's so many interesting gadgets and features.
I instantly, back in the day, I made some little Delta robots that were inspired by the turrets doing their little orchestra thing.
Yeah.
So they're playing stylophones to try and make that like.
Oh, really?
The thing,
that's
like,
awesome.
You're like going through an elevator at some point, and these little turret robots make a little orchestra. Like, I want to make that so bad, and they were just made out of like, you know.
Do you have video of that?
Oh my goodness.
Is there evidence on the internet?
It was a long time ago. It was like 2013.
Pre-pier.
And yeah,
Wow.
pre-pier. And they were made of wood with like holes cut in them, and it was sort of like a steampunk version, just because what I had was like brass hardware and like wood with holes cut in it, like laser cut wood with holes in it, and like this big trunk, like an old antique trunk, and they're like, and like these stylophones and stuff. And
so cool.
They don't look like the turrets at all, but
they make music.
They make the music,
right? Inspired
and
by.
all broken. Yeah. I would love it to see one of your, like, you make one of the turrets, and the two that you can play in the like dual player mode. Are you thinking of doing those as well, or is that like too much?
That's a pie in the sky thing, because they're basic. They might as well be androids. These
true, yeah.
These robots.
Atlas and Peabody.
Yeah, people. I mean, people have certainly asked, but I mean, you can see.
And if you wanted to articulate them, it'd be.
It would be so hard. Not that it's impossible, but especially when you have something that has like humanoid legs, people always expect like, oh, does it walk? I'm like, if I had $5 million and a research team, maybe, you know. Yeah,
and plus these are like designed as aesthetic things, and they're rigged for motion, but it's not like they have actuators, like they simulated the physics of having actuators.
It's funny you mentioned that, because that was one of the big things that frustrated me with GLaDOS is her mechanics are kind of nonsense in the way that she moves. And especially like with Wheatley too, a lot of parts are just floating.
Yeah.
Like they're not attached to anything. Like he's just got shells and they move relative to each other, but they're just floating in the air, you know? Because the game designers can do whatever they want. And with GLaDOS too, like her neck has like 6 actuators, but like they're all redundant and like they would lock each other.
Right.
You know, like I've looked at the model so much. I've looked at the game model so much, but it's like everything like clips through it. Like when it moves, it's like if you look close, it's like, oh, that clips through it. Especially with Wheatley too, like so many parts just like push through his outer shell. I'm like, well, I can't do that in real life. He has to have compliance or some other way of moving. So I've tweaked the design to be as plausible as possible while maintaining accuracy, but I had to change things or else everything just would be a heap.
Yeah, totally. That's really interesting.
And that's honestly half the fun of it. It's like recreating is fine, but it's like that kind of design challenge of like, how do you make something that was not designed to actually exist? Really exist.
Yeah. It's like prop designers sometimes, but I feel like robotics is even a step further. Like prop designers sometimes have to deal with like making lightsabers, for example.
Right.
Like, you know, there's nothing that does that.
No.
Except that Alan Penn made a sort of cool lightsaber kind of thing.
The flame one.
Spreading. It's just like hideously dangerous.
Right.
But also it looks really cool. But like,
have you seen it in person?
No.
Oh, okay.
But I've seen the video. I don't know. Yeah, tell us about, you've got a bunch of projects under your belt. What is your favorite part of the process in building one of these?
Honestly, yeah, that design process, because there's always a point where I'm like 80 to 90% done and there's nothing but work left. Like there's nothing to design, there's nothing to figure out. It's just print this, sand it, assemble it. But like design challenges, done. I figured it out. So I'm I wish I picked up 3D modeling earlier, because I didn't know. I didn't know when I was a kid that this was like, I heard about it, like, you know, there's still computer animation, you know, when we were younger.
There's like 4 different ways we could go with this. You still have to learn things. We both make videos for places for people to learn how to build hardware. Where do you learn how to build hardware when you don't know something?
I mean, it's been a lifelong process at this point.
Where did you start?
I'll start at the very beginning.
Very good place.
I picked up at a book fair one of those like 40-in-1 electronics kits where you like build circuits and you attach them to springs.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And like I did the whole book and I went through and built all the projects. I didn't understand any, like it was just too much for me. I was like 12. But I'm like, oh, this is so cool. Like I can build circuits. It wasn't a thing. Like it was way too obscure. And like I also got a book on robotics at Borders. I miss Borders. And I remember reading, it was like how to make robots for beginners, and it was beam bots. Remember beam robotics?
Yeah, I mean,
solar powered.
Like Mohit Poite is doing these like beam, like these hummers and stuff, which are like solar powered little bing bing like LED
everything he makes is just ridiculously beautiful.
So
I'm like, I could just imagine him going home and just like bending little brass wires. I'm like, oh, here's my perfect little satellite.
Yeah.
You know.
But it gets back to what you were saying about when the design stuff is kind of done and then you kind of have to do this like, do you find it meditative at all, like doing the assembly afterwards and the 3D printing, or is it more like, oh, now I have to contend with the physical structure of what I've wrought?
Right. Yeah. It's like, oh wow, this fit perfectly in CAD, but like, you know, now I have to sand things down or like bend things a little bit, you know, because you know you can design perfectly. But like in reality, you know, my machines aren't perfectly calibrated. It's like a hole is more like an oval, or like if I build something that's 3 feet long, like maybe it's like 2.95 inches, and that makes a difference for like precise parts. But getting back to like how did I learn this stuff? So did that, and I also bought like a soldering iron because like that kickstarted me enough. And I got some like stuff at Radio Shack. Like I used to go to Radio Shack all the time as a kid. And it was still it was pretty crappy in the aughts. Like I always see like people talk about it like it was a magical place in the 80s. I could only imagine.
Same. Like when I was there, it was mostly like, I'm not actually sure what a servo is, but would you like these cell phone parts?
Yeah, and they didn't shift over until the maker stuff until way too late. But like they moved away from that. That's why you died, Radio Shack. You died because you didn't embrace do-it-yourself culture.
Take heed.
They still technically exist. It's weird.
I think I've seen like one around in the last couple of years.
Yeah, they still do ads. I'm like, no, you're not real. You're not real. It's some other company bought them, but. Anyway, I bought some books at Radio Shack, and I bought one of the irons you plug directly into the wall.
Oh my god. Yeah,
because it was cheap. It was like $20. And I definitely burnt myself a couple times. And when I was like 14, I'm like this sucks. I don't know what I'm doing. So I stopped for years. And then I just slowly picked it up because, you know, Make Magazine started getting popular, Instructables, like maker culture, like late aughts, early teens was like pretty hot.
Maker spaces started being a thing.
Maker spaces showed up. Yeah. I remember when I was in college, I very briefly was an electrical engineering major. But the reason I immediately swapped out was at the end of that semester, we had to like build this little maze solving robot. And
what robot?
A maze solving robot.
Oh yeah.
And I asked the TA, and I was like, because I had an Arduino, and I'm like, I would like to use this as the main processor. Is that okay? Instead of this like huge National Instruments board that you know, whatever they sold the colleges for, I'm sure like $1,000. Anyway, and I didn't like it because it was like graphical programming. I'm like, like I know enough C++, like I can do this, and I did it, and it's worked just fine. But at the end of it, the TA said, "Oh, I thought you were also going to use the National Instruments board." I'm like, no. He's like, well, you know, I'm going to give you a C+. I'm like,
I am consciously resisting giving several rude gestures right now.
I know, but like it made me so sad.
It's so maddening.
It made me so sad because I'm like, I was able to solve the problem in a simpler way, still using similar technology. I'm like, is this not engineering? Also, just the fact that that course was 95% theory, 5% lab, where it's just like, oh, we're gonna put some resistors on a breadboard and measure the voltages across them. And
man,
you know, I'm
and
just
not
like,
actually use them.
Right? Yeah. So at that point, because I'd already done some hardware and like, you know, built things, I'm like, this is so boring. Like, this is the most dry way you could possibly teach people. I'm like.
And then actively discouraging you from problem solving on your own and exploring on your own, which there should be like, which is why like now we have this STEAM concept, which is like, oh yes, arts and creativity are part of the technological process, which is so important. Right. And that just like wasn't a thing that was on their minds.
No. And that's the thing, like whenever, like I've done some basic electronics class with people, like at one of the maker spaces I worked at, and people really respond to that. Like if you have them build real hardware, like it really,
even if it's just simple, they're like, wow,
I did that. I lit up an LED because it doesn't exist in people's minds that they can do this, but you can. Yeah. Anyone can. And like, not that, you know, it was the good old days, like 10 years ago, but there's so much out there. There's so much good content. Just like, you know, Adafruit and SparkFun. I love them to death. And like now Pimeroni, and there's a bunch of because the Raspberry Pi didn't exist back then.
Yeah.
There were Linux single board computers, but it was like way more of a pain. I don't know, did you ever do anything Linuxy before the Pi?
I mean, I had the university gave us each like a Linux server that was like a virtual server.
Okay.
So we could I messed around on that, but not like a hardware thing. It was just I had this virtual access to a server, and I learned how to make files and do a little website kind of thing that was on there.
Yeah, that's still something. Like that's still cool, but yeah.
But I can't imagine trying to do that on like one of those awful little. Yeah.
I don't even know. But
sounds painful, but also I'm sure that people had a lot of fun with them. Just because sometimes the difficulty is part of the enjoyable part. I feel like with 3D printing, it's kind of a balance there. It's there's frustrations, but also it's kind of cool that you have to contend with a physical medium in that way.
Yeah, I mean my whole jam is I think Autodesk always say this was, I don't know if anyone else does it, digital fabrication, where it's always the CAD to CAM process. You're making something and then a machine that's a CNC of some kind does the rest. Mm-hmm. No real manual processes. And with 3D printing, it's rapid prototyping. You're going to make mistakes, but then you just do it again.
Iterate.
And again, and again, and again. Oh, gosh, that was one of the things. So I still need to do this properly. But with GLaDOS, I kept every single failed part as much as possible. I had well over 100 failed or not necessarily bad, but just I need to redesign this. But it could have been a part that took 16 hours to print.
Oh, you don't have a photo of that, do you? That'd be amazing.
It was in the final video. I didn't go over it too much because I'm just here's my box of failures.
Oh, wow.
But that's part of the process, and that's the thing that people don't show a whole lot. Mm-hmm. And I think for another big project, and I didn't do it for Wheatley, but for another big project, I really want to keep and eventually lay out every single failed part on a long table, so you can see this evolution all the way to the final product, and be it's always a struggle.
Yeah,
it's always a struggle. There's never just how many parts have you reprinted and designed for Archimedes?
Lots. And I switch media as well, because I'll parts would break and parts would fall off, and I'd try eventually at the end I was trying to sort of replace every part that broke or fell off with a piece of recycled plastic somehow. So I was taking these milk jugs and cutting them up and melting them on a heat plate and making a new little beak, so half of the beak is made of a CD and half the beak is made of a milk jug. The original ones all have these highlights from CDs that are you have to boil them and then you split them in half so that you can cut them and they won't crack and split. Mm-hmm. And then you can use the shiny CD pieces and stuff. I learned that on Instructables. But yeah, then the later pieces are all made of vaguely melty milk jug. And then Archimedes 2, I didn't really do second versions of many projects at all until I met Jay, who does a million versions of his robots, and I was eventually oh, maybe I should do a second version of Archimedes instead of just continuously working on the first one. And then when you show up to an event, everything is half baked, and you don't have one that just works. I feel yours are probably going to stay in one place, right? Or are you going to be able to take them to?
This guy definitely staying in one place. One, when he's completed, he's going to be Our shell is just so big. I did a test fit just to see, and I'm so excited. But he's going to be too big to carry. Yeah. Not that he's going to be too heavy, just too awkward. Yeah. I guess that he's a ball. There's nowhere to put him. But I've already started designing right now because of course they make small round displays.
Oh yes.
So I'm making mini Wheatley. That one's going to be a full tutorial. So cool. If you want to make your own mini core.
What are the different cores?
There's Wheatley, who's technically not morality. He's not morality. Intelligence dampening. He's designed to make everything stupid. There's Curiosity, Adventure, and Space. Space core.
Space.
In the first game, there was a Fact core and Anger core. I don't know. Just
you had to knock them all off at the end of the thingamajig. Yeah.
There's one more I'm forgetting. But yeah, there's not a whole lot, and there's I mean, there's mods and things. People are like, "Oh, you're gonna make this thing from this mod?" I'm like, I don't know.
There's a lot of things to make, but
yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. It's like there's so much to make. I'm just gonna say yes to all of it. I think it'll be a fun series. I think it'll be really fun.
That's gonna be amazing. Everyone, you can tune in. We're gonna put the links in the description of the video as always. But yeah, DJ's Instagram and YouTube. Before we wrap up, I feel like I've taken a ton of your time.
Not at all.
I could keep going forever, but there's one specific other question I want to ask you. What was your favorite machine to work with at Pier 9 and why? So this is the fantastical wonderland of Pier 9, Autodesk's Instructables residency area, and also like other things. And that residency is kind of morphed over time. It went away. It came back as manufacturing residency, etc. I'm not sure where they are right now, but they had the most amazing machines. They had these huge 3D printers,
laser
machines.
cutters.
They had like an 11-axis mill.
The water jet.
Yeah, huge water jet. Beautiful milling machines.
Yeah.
Huge routers.
I wish I knew, because now I know some CNC stuff. I took every class there just because I wanted to.
I wish I had taken all the classes, but
like the Haas or anything like that. It was just it's too powerful. I'm like, if I screw up, it's like a $10,000 mistake.
Did you do anything really interesting on the 3D printing machines?
That honestly probably was my favorite, just because the objects, in my mind, are basically replicators, because you could print, because they printed in this like crunchy jello, you could model any geometry you wanted at extreme resolution. Like I shouldn't have done this, but like because it was a fun test, I could model M2 threads in a 3D print. I didn't need to, but I could, and they came out. Nice. Like, I don't know, that spoiled me. That was the first 3D printer I really used. So these are like $250,000 to $500,000 machines. So I'm like,
and the resin was also like ridiculously expensive.
Oh God. Well, I mean, we didn't have to pay for it, but we had to track all of it.
We had to track it.
Yeah. And I was always worried. I'm like, did I use too much? Like, is Vanessa gonna be mad at me?
Is she gonna be like, why did you make this thing with this?
Never happened. People printed some big stuff that was like, you could have made that another way. It was like a 30-hour print or something. No, because that was like learning to drive. Actually, it wasn't as hard as it's still a 3D printer. You just still model it, you still print it, but like definitely spoiled compared to anything
learning to
else.
drive on like a Ferrari or something.
Yeah, I'm like, okay, here's your used Toyota Corolla from 1980. No, but 3D printers nowadays are so good and so cheap. So it's a good time to do that.
It's exciting to have a dual extrusion one now.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't wait to see what you do with that. Yeah. Anything else?
Bigger robots. More.
How big is the print volume?
250 by 450 by 500, I think.
Centimeters?
Yeah.
Dang.
Oh well, no, millimeters.
Oh, millimeters.
Yeah. Centimeters would be if it was 400, that'd be 4
Oh,
meters.
yeah, duh. Yeah.
I wish, and like they do make absurd volume printers that are cost like $100,000, but I wouldn't want to use that, because if a part fails, now you're talking about wasting pounds of material.
Yeah, but that's for like fashion houses and stuff where they're like, we're going to make an entire 3D printed dress and it must be in one piece. Well, she'd make like prosthetics for Victoria Modesta.
Oh, yeah.
Like, just like.
Yeah.
Anything you'd like to throw in there before we wrap up?
No, this was a lot of fun and gonna make a lot more cool stuff. And I think I'll be back with full-size Wheatley, or at least mini Wheatley.
Yeah,
both. Yeah. Thanks for watching.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Everyone have a great day. Thank you for watching, and hack on.
Hack on.
Yes.